in the coming year. And
Sorry
and
for
the
that
third
delay.
part, that's all right. The third part is this network, which is the peer learning network. And those first two items are really about kind of an expert-driven model, if you will, of folks that have expertise sharing that with you, but where most of you are kind of listening in and learning from those experts. But the peer learning network, and we're going to emphasize this over and over again because it might be different from the way that some of you have typically been inclined to learn. But although I think there's enough startup, small organizations that have ignored that model and said that you can pretty much do anything you want if you put your mind to it. But the goal of the peer learning network and the thrust of the peer learning network is that the capacity is local. The capacity is with you. And if you don't have it, you can learn from each other, or you can seek out others to create that capacity. And so the idea was to flip that expert driven model on its head and create these regional to community based to regional networks throughout the state that can increase that learning. And ultimately, over time, we hope that that increases the pace and scale of high quality forest business types of development and the types of businesses that you're looking at. So, that means that, after today and probably the next meeting, but after those two meetings, the agenda and where this goes is really up to you and where you decide to steer this. But we're here to help. We're here to facilitate this, and we're here to make it happen. So we want to make sure that the connections are maximized, that the learning comes from you, self-directed in a way. But where there's missing elements, we can bring in those folks, hopefully have them be a part of the network and share their learning and build the capacity that way. So hopefully that makes sense. And hopefully because you're here and because the overwhelming number of people that responded to the survey said that they wanted to make this happen, that there's a lot of interest in this. One of the other reasons we formed this too is that there's a number of really great networks related to forests and forest management in California. Some of the burning networks. There's been a biomass collaborative for quite some time. Martin from the Watershed Center, who I see is on, helps run that now, and that's gone through several iterations. But we weren't really seeing a business focused network. And I think part of the reason for that is that businesses are often competing with each other. And because of that, they're not always thinking in a collaborative space, although they might be parts of collaboratives. But we think there's an opportunity here, not just for learning, but for collaboration, partnerships, and potentially expanding or building on the business models that you've developed. So we hope that there's an added bonus there that also helps your businesses as you develop them, or your organizations. So I'll stop there with that. If I don't know if we have any time for questions, or if there's anything else we want to cover there, Kathleen.
Yeah, we can have questions here if people have questions about sort of what Vance has already touched on. We will have time for questions after each of the chats as well. Where John McCarthy is going to start and briefly, and then we'll have questions there. And then we have four panelists, and we'll have questions after each of them, and then we'll do the breakout rooms after that. So we're trying to make it, opportunities along the way for questions. But if anyone has upfront questions and you want to go ahead and raise your hand, please do.
And Carrie and Kathleen, feel free to chime in if I missed anything there.
Yeah, that was great. Okay, so folks seem pretty clear about the group so far, kind of the intent and where we're going after today. It seems like, okay, great. Do you want to touch on the overview from the survey results? And just remember, there are 2 pages. So if you are, I'm scrolling back and forth, but if you do want to ask a question, just make sure to raise your hand or just unmute and you can ask too. But yeah.
So we'll send you out more details on the survey, and I'll as soon as I stop talking here, and introduce John, I'll send out a link to this. But as most of you know, we sent out a survey to help guide us in kind of the topics and themes and interests that you have related to the peer learning network. I'm just going to touch on a couple of kind of key highlights here, but as I mentioned, you can see the details once we share this link. We got about a 10% response. That it's 23 people answered. I think we'll refine this as we go along and develop the network if we've missed anything. But some similar themes came up that keep coming up in California related to forestry. Pretty much everybody except one said they're interested. I think the one unsure person just said they weren't sure. What draws you to this network? Not surprisingly, learning was high up there. Collaboration featured quite a bit. People mentioned building relationship with like-minded businesses, but also different types of businesses in the chain of from doing work in the woods to processing that timber to marketing it. So I think that's an important part that we want to make sure we touch on. And actually, I forgot finance at the beginning of that chain as things that people wanted to cover that they're interested in. And then the themes that and we'll go into more detail with our breakout groups later on this afternoon. But the themes that came up, the top 4 were workforce development, not surprising. Forest management, best practices was second. Marketing, especially marketing finished wood products, was third, and proposal writing and budgeting for raising funds was fourth. Actually, advanced sawmill came up as tied for that, and then in a similar vein, the navigating the permitting regulatory processes. That's one theme that we're probably not going to cover on a lot, but we will if needed, and kind of tap into folks that are working on that. There's a CEQA person in John's shop, I think, that, or at least in Cal Fire, that covers that part. There's also Ascent Environmental that's doing a lot of work in this space too. So we may have a speaker come in that area if needed. Biggest challenges, funding came up over and over again in this, like in the different answers that folks had. Consistent workflow, working in a low margin industry, workforce came up again, labor. So you can see workforce coming up a lot there again. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the gist of what we learned there and what came back, and we'll use those results as we develop the subgroups or the committees of the peer learning network. And there's probably going to be some items that come up that are more ad hoc, that depend on funding cycles, policy cycles. We might find that there are policy issues across teams that folks want to tackle, and team up with other collaboratives to address too. Workforce development's an obvious one there, but marketing and making it easier for businesses to do work in the woods, in whatever form that may take, might be another.
Thanks, Vance. And I'll just add, for the breakout rooms after, where you can kind of self-select, what you'd like to connect around, what topic. We've got them set up currently under 4 groups, so you'll be able to choose and which one you want to join: workforce development, forest management, marketing finished wood products, and then proposals, budgeting, and fundraising kind of all as one together. So that'll be in the small group breakouts, just so you have a heads up to that ahead of time. Any questions for anyone about the survey results or anything about that? And again, we'll be putting that in the chat and sending it out with a survey for this meeting as well, so you can see the further details. Okay. Vance, you want to go ahead and introduce John, and then we'll get started. And John, if you could raise your hand in the reactions thing, that way you'll be pinned to the top and everyone will find you easily. And Vance, you're muted, just so you make sure you know. Thank you, John.
Great. Well, I'll make this pretty quick. I've known John for gosh, more than years, and actually in the top left-hand corner of my Zoom meeting, there's 3 Peace Corps volunteers that were all volunteers in Bolivia, starting in the late. Well, I'm not going to say the year. That's embarrassing. And they were John, Kathleen, and I. So we all served as volunteers in Bolivia. And but when I moved to California a couple of decades ago, of course, John's a lifelong resident. We reconnected here. He was working at Sierra Pacific Industries at the time. Went to visit him up there, and I always remember going out and seeing some of the work he was doing and some of the projects. And he kind of got me interested in the space to begin with. I was more of a conservationist and biodiversity, and had studiously ignored or avoided or opposed anything to do with the forest industry. But over time, as I worked in California, I realized how important this industry and working in the woods was to both the economy, local communities, and biodiversity conservation, frankly. And John's played a big role in my thinking in that realm. So more recently, John started work with CAL FIRE, leading up the business and workforce development program, and has ably led that program since its start. And they've given out millions of dollars to forest businesses, and really created a buzz around this space, and really provide some much needed support. We hope that there's more to come, and a lot more to come from the legislature, and that's leveraged into a lot more funding. So pleased to introduce John as a friend and colleague, and welcome, John. And John's going to talk to you about the program and field any programs that you may have.
Wow, thanks, Vance. That was a great intro. I appreciate it. And it's great to be with you and working with you. And Kathleen, I know if we talked a while, we could probably figure out we may have been coming and going in Bolivia similar, but I'm sure we know 50 people together. I think looking at attendees today, I know at least half of you. I think I see 4 or 5 or 6 current grantees and others that have been applying with good projects, and we've done debriefs and we're getting new applications. So yes, I'm here. Let's see, is Jason, my colleague, Jason Butcher, might be on page 2. See here, I know he was going to have to run, but he's here. My other colleague is Justin Britton. He's in training this week. I think I'm going to go off script. I got a 2-minute video. It says a lot about our program. Can I do a screen share and play that?
Yeah, I might have to make you co-host to let you screen share. Let me go ahead and do that.
Let me see. It might work.
See if you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see.
I'll just make you co-host, and then let's just. Did it
See
work?
if it works. Can you guys see a video screen?
It says you're sharing sound.
Oh, all right. Let me try again. Should have practiced this. Share sound. Okay, this should work. Sorry, folks.
Yep.
How about now? Let's see if, tell me if the sound works.
No sound yet. You might just have to enable
Ah.
sound too. I
All
think when
right.
you go to share screen, if you enable sound as
Yeah, that's
well.
what I was looking for. Sorry, folks. Go share screen, share sound, screen 2. How about now?
Yep.
Great.
We are at American Wood Fibers at the Jamestown location. We receive in logs primarily through fire sales and beetle kill in this region. So it's repurposing logs that generally are not of a high enough quality to go to the wood mills. We bring them through a shaving system, we dry that material, and we turn it into bedding for primarily horses and other animals. So over the past 2 or 3 years, we've seen sort of the demand increasing at a steady pace. Thus, we know we had to grow to meet those demands over the next 5 years. The grant has allowed us to do multiple things. One is to add another shaving system. We'll be using the older drier logs that we're seeing from the older fires and some of the older bug kill and running it through this new style of shaving system where you don't have to dry the material. And we're also looking at adding another full packaging line, which would just about double the output capability of what we have today.
When you can take non-merchantable, not traditionally valuable logs, diseased logs, bug-killed logs, fire-burned logs, off the landscape, that sets the stage for reforestation activities. And so without removing that material, it's really hard to cost-effectively get a new forest started. We're the only CAL FIRE grant program that actually makes grants with private businesses, with the understanding that by increasing capacity at these businesses, they're going to create a market-based solution.
We absolutely, as a company, very much appreciate working with CAL FIRE. It's been a wonderful experience, and we're definitely going to see the fruit of that relationship coming soon.
Great. Am I back?
You're back. Thank you for that.
Okay.
That was great.
Yeah, so that was a larger business, American Wood Fibers. They're one of our grantees. I think, you know, and like Justin, that's my colleague Justin. A lot of you know him. He was saying we're one of the only grant program at CAL FIRE that can do grants to private businesses. We do believe that market-based solutions are important to you know, approaching and the challenges we have in managing California forests, workforce development, wildfire resilience, carbon sequestration, all of that. What we really see is there's a lot of good businesses out there. You guys have a lot of good ideas, and sometimes it just doesn't quite pencil out. So where it doesn't quite pencil out, that's where we work best. You come to us and say, look, if I get this piece of equipment, if I can train these workers, if I could get this environmental document done, we're off and running. But I need some help in that step. So that's really to us like a great grant, you know, where we can plug a gap and then step back and you guys take it from there. So we've done 5 rounds of applications and awards, and we're reviewing the 5th round right now. There's a lot of interest, a lot of good proposals. Forest Business Alliance has certainly, we can almost see a grant application that's had assistance, because it's like, oh, that's written really well. That addresses our eligibility. That addresses our goal. It's easy. It makes sense. It's clear. It's a clear ask. And those, you know, well-written grant applications are just easier for reviewers to get through and understand. We have, I think, 60 current applications that we're reviewing. So if you can make your story clean and clear and show what you're asking and what it's going to do. Work with each other. You're not really, in a sense, you're competing because there's a limited amount of work at dollars available. But business is all about partnerships and working together. And the more you guys are partnering and collaborating and building these networks, everybody's going to win. So happy to be here at this first meeting. Please, if I think most of you know our program, but you could go to Cal Fire Wood Products and Bioenergy. There's a ton of information on there about our grants program, some videos, grant guidelines, past awards, lots of stuff. So, and you can always reach out to me or Jason or Justin with questions. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Does anyone have questions for John about the program or any of his remarks or anything at all about this specific Cal Fire program? Now's the opportunity. Don't be shy. And again, you can either raise your hand or just come off mute and we'll find you. Okay. All right, I guess you're off the hook, John. Thank you so much. You may lower
Thanks,
your
Kathleen.
hand. Yeah, thank you. And Vance did put in the chat the link to the summary of the survey that we did, including, just note the password at the bottom because it is password protected. So, and John, if you want to lower your hand, you can be off the speaker highlight next. So, we're going to move now to our panel. We're just calling these peer speed talks, and there's just 4 folks here. We'll have Josh go first. So Josh, if you want to raise your hand as well, we can see you up in that corner. And Josh is with Resilience Force. And we've asked each speaker to speak a little bit about their organization or business, how they got where they are now, and how they are thinking they might benefit from participating in this group and what they might bring. So Josh, are you ready? And can you raise your hand, Josh? Do you, under reactions?
Let's see.
If you see in the bottom reactions.
Oh, I do see it.
There you go.
There we go.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kathleen.
And feel free to do any other introduction about yourself that you'd like to share.
Sure, sounds good. Thanks, Kathleen. Thanks, Vance. My name is Josh Cox, and I lead Resilience Force. Resilience Force is a for-profit national labor brokerage that does work in the climate space. In the Gulf Coast region, we provide workers after disaster context to help disaster restoration companies do recovery and reconstruction. But more importantly, in the California context, we have been working with a local partner to try to build the workforce that's needed to do vegetation management. Over the past 14 months, we've been working with North Bay Jobs with Justice, and we've been providing a suite of trainings for workers who have a lot of experience working in vineyards. Obviously, that work is seasonal, and workers really jump at the opportunity to have other ways of making money when, let's say the weather is bad, or, if just for some reason work isn't as steady as they'd like. And so we have been providing, like I said, trainings over the past year. We started with a cohort of 25 workers. And then those workers have been deployed doing projects with, nonprofits that you've heard of, like Russian Riverkeeper, Occidental Arts and Ecology Center. And we have been doing everything from arunda removal to various kinds of other land treatments. We got introduced to Vance and to Cal Fire. It kind of perfectly mirrors what John's video, or what John was sort of talking about. We have the workers, and we can see that there's a huge need for increased labor to do this vegetation management. And what was missing for us was the cash and the opportunity to like offer a training regime, and to sort of build continually the cohorts. And so we just recently, I guess it was September 30th or 28th, submitted a CAL FIRE workforce development grant that would allow us to, recruit, train, and then deploy several additional cohorts of workers, so that we could expand, the amount of clients that we can go get and the types of projects that we can do. And so, in the future, we, look to do work again with every RCD possible. We hope to expand to do vegetation management and defensible space work with counties. But we're really hoping that that this CAL FIRE grant, which we don't know whether we got or not, but we're hoping that it is a huge stepping stone for us, and can allow us to fill the gap that we needed in terms of recruiting and training workers, so that we could then deploy them at a family sustaining wage and in a way that makes business sense.
Thank you, Josh.
Sure.
Does anyone have questions for Josh about the work that he's doing or the process of applying or anything? Yeah, Thea, go ahead. You'll need to unmute. Yep.
Hi, Josh.
Hey.
I was wondering, any contracts in place for where the biomass material goes, or treatments?
No, we don't. And that's like a really great question. We have been trying to think about that as another way of trying to monetize what we do. Oftentimes we'll end up chipping Arundo is a perfect example. We'll end up chipping Arundo and then, spraying it over the banks of the Russian River. But if there was some way for us to, work with a partner, we're certainly open to that.
Great question and example. Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else have questions?
The last thing that I'll say is, Carrie and Vance, they were tremendous help, a tremendous help for us as we tried to navigate this whole process. And so, for those of you who are thinking about doing a grant, I really recommend that you lean on their expertise, because it was really valuable for us.
That's awesome. Thank you. Okay. Do you feel complete, Josh? Anything else you wanted to add, or does that cover it?
Yeah, I'm good. I've got a 2-year-old who has pink eye at the moment, and so I'm gonna have to return to daddy duty.
Okay. Thanks so much, Josh. We appreciate your time. Yeah.
Thanks. Take care.
Okay. So I'd like to invite now Tamara Costa, and Tamara, if you can also raise your hand, then we can put you in that the spotlight under reactions, just in the lower bar there. And Tamara's with Regenerative Forest Solutions. Perfect. And she's also perfect. It's working. And you are still muted, so you'll just unmute.
Great. Can you hear me? All good? Thanks for having me here today. I'm really excited to learn from all of you in this peer learning network, and this is a great kickoff. Great to be here, and really wonderful to follow on the coattails of Josh. We did meet with Resilience Workforce, and we're excited to kind of work in collaboration, as I'll share in my presentation about what we're working on from wood products utilization in Sonoma County. So it ties in really nicely with what Josh was saying. I represent Regenerative Forest Solutions, and also my collaborator, Jeremy Fisher from Forestry Collective, couldn't be here today, but I will be sharing a little bit more about the milling operations for small diameter timber that he's working to accomplish to resolve some of these issues of biomass utilization. And I have to say, I'm working in collaboration with Sonoma County organizations and stakeholders. If I did a slide of all the organizations and great work happening within our county, it would take up a good chunk of time, but there is a significant effort underway here, and just feeling grateful that the foundation has been laid through the Sonoma County Forest Conservation Working Group with our Ag and Open Space District, Permit Sonoma, Sonoma Water, and other organizations that we're pleased to be with. So I'll just give a little bit of a story that I am a mothballed mill site in Sonoma County. So this was my entry into this work. We have a historical mill site with forested acreage, and it was really in stewarding that forested land that it became apparent how not only difficult is it to do it economically, but also that there's an overabundance of wooding material on our forest that could be utilized for building material. This is a site of, you can see my cursor here, of approximately 172 acres. It runs this length, and the mill site is located right here. This old part was where the lumber yard was, and all the green manufacturing is happening on this side of the road. This 85 acres is being stewarded via prescribed burning and other treatments that we're doing to restore the forest to a healthier state, clear cut several times over, which is very representative of this area in Sonoma County. So due to our interest in stewarding the forest and the expertise of my partner, Jeremy Fisher and Marisha Farnes, they co-founded Forestry Collective in 2020 to help start thinking about how to utilize this material in an appropriate way. So they both have expertise in architecture and a background in the built environment, and they're really focused on how to utilize this material efficiently. In 2021, forestry was awarded the BioBiz competition for Sonoma County, which really kicked off the business, and was also awarded a U.S. Forest Service Wood Innovation Grant into feedstock supply. So the company is in really the early stage, and was awarded another CAL FIRE grant 2023. This is the shot of the mill that Forestry Collective is operating. They were able to successfully fundraise to purchase high capacity commercial mill from Canada called the Woodlandia Log Ripper, which can very efficiently process small diameter wood. The interesting part is Jeremy and Marisha started getting into this business and utilizing robotics to try to increase the efficiency and margins on using this very usable resource that our forests provide. They found that there was a feedstock and supply chain issue. How do we beat the chipper for the small diameter logs has become a current issue. So this is what they're doing and how it works. So they work with forest improvement projects. They use the single pass scrag mill. They do value action, which can create value for the forest landowner to be able to sell us logs, for forestry to sell logs, and then they create value around carbon beneficial furniture products. So as they were working through these business solutions, the realization of the supply chain became very apparent. So I co-founded Regenerative Forest Solutions last year to not only utilize the forest of the site that we own for an educational purpose and engagement for landowners to engage in more ecological forest stewardship practices, but also to try to solve for this issue of supply chain logistics. So our ecosystem of impact includes carbon and climate. We look at ecology and the forest systems and how this work is being completed. We do education engagement and then also wood products research. And we're very excited to be embarking on the Sonoma County Woody Feedstock Pilot Project. Now we're off the record. It must be recorded. We were awarded through North Coast Resource Partnership as selected as a pilot project for Sonoma County. So we're excited to be engaged with many organizations and working groupers to be able to look at how do you utilize more biomass in our county. The mill site at Green Valley, where Forestry Collective is located, will only be one of the sites, but really we're going to be assessing the entire county and looking at where are the efficient and effective sites for aggregating logs and utilizing them from a county vegetation management perspective, and then also for water quality and quantity for our ecosystems. Ultimately, the economics of this are important. Sonoma County received a large PG&E settlement many years ago, and that money isn't going to last forever. So that's currently subsidizing some of the work in addition to CAL FIRE's grant program, the CFIP program and NBFIP program that forest landowners can apply to get support to managing their forests, but this money won't last forever. So we have to create some sort of economy that will help offset the forest work at hand and provide jobs like what Resilience Workforce is creating for people here. So it's just this win-win-win. And I think many of us here at the table today understand that need. So basically that's all I wanted to share today. Thank you for the time to share our Woody Feedstock Project, our organizations, and some of our efforts here in Sonoma County.
Thank you so much, Tamara. That was great. Does anyone have questions for Tamara?
Tamara, hey, this is Vance. I was wondering, I mean, you're very much a community-based organization. How do you think what you're doing applies to other forest organizations or even larger organizations, especially those that are trying to source feedstock in Forest Service lands, and what are you learning now that could be applied, say, just further north in the Mendocino or like further west, like in some of the Sierra National Forests, where we're getting longer term contracts for feedstock is pretty challenging.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I think what we're learning is that the community-based approach is what we're really called to help strategize around, and that we feel that small-scale regional milling infrastructure that's mobile and is able to scale on feedstock availability will be the most viable economically for the long term. Multi-million-dollar large-scale industrial milling infrastructure, has a certain feedstock quantity supply issue that we're trying to create something that's a little bit smaller, and that won't be as driven by the need for 20-year contracts. Because in our county, for example, we have a challenge with parcelization of the land. So the majority of our forest landowners are small scale. So we have to figure out how to bundle these contracts. Our pilot project is going to determine what kind of entity can most easily facilitate the aggregation of these projects and the equipment purchasing and fundraising that's necessary. So we're looking at a joint powers of authority, a cooperative, and a community service district as potential entity structures that could host and do the fundraising to provide the equipment and the transportation hauling that's necessary to effectively process biomass.
Thanks, Tamara. Yeah, I think the other area could be like working with fire safe councils or folks doing, WUI based thinning that is, 90% of which is on parcelized private land. So it'll be super cool to see what you learn as that develops, because that's something that isn't getting as much funding for forest health projects, but is still, 30%, I think, of forested land is privately held in the state. So it's a pretty large acres. It's a lot of acres.
Yes, and we have over 25 organizations actively working within our county alone. And we have our neighbor to the south, Marin County, who has some marine biomass projects. So we'll be learning from their work as well. They were funded by the Office of Public Research to also do this work. And it's interesting to see how people are approaching it in different counties with different quantities of feedstock available. Yes, but absolutely utilizing the infrastructure of community organizations. We're part of many of them. I'm also a board member of Gold Ridge Resource Conservation District, which does a lot of outreach and engagement of landowners. And then there's numerous volunteer-based organizations as well. Yes. So we're thinking about how to work with tribal organizations. So how can they benefit and participate in this work? So that's another layer to always keep in mind, like to engage early and often and try to create those relationships is important to us.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Tamara? Okay, great. Thanks so much, Tamara. I appreciate your time. And that was great, very helpful. And now we'll go to Sutton. Sutton, if you want to raise your hand too and be in the spotlight. Sutton's with Arbor Energy. And this might be our last presentation because it looks like the other person is not on the call today. So after this, we'll have a little time for questions and then we'll do the breakout poll. So thanks, Sutton. Go ahead.
All right, and how long do I have? Just to make sure I'm keeping that.
Well, we're ahead of time, and you had around 8.5 minutes per our original agenda.
So I can really ham on here. No, I'll keep it brief. Great to meet everyone. Sutton Goldner, head of business development with Arbor Energy. My personal background is in conventional energy projects. I worked for Shell for a number of years in first their deepwater oil and gas space before moving into their biofuels portfolio, working on drop-in liquid fuels from waste products. So a lot of similarity to what we're working on here with Arbor. But at Arbor, we're a team of we're a VC-backed startup team of actually a lot of former rocket engineers looking to develop and deploy a new technology that can be utilized to convert a lot of the heterogeneous waste feedstocks coming off of forestry restoration projects into high integrity carbon credits. We often like to compare ourselves to the biomass plants that are currently operating in California. And if you kind of look through those facilities, something that you'll quickly notice is that biomass, while being a great carrier of carbon, is not a great carrier of energy. And it means that projects that are fundamentally just converting that biomass to energy are very hard to premise, especially for new projects with stringent requirements around permitting, community engagement, and all these things that are very important. But it's really hard to develop new facilities. And so our thesis at Arbor is that if we design a different type of cycle, we were drawing on a lot of work from a company called Net Power in Texas that allows for the electrical generation from feedstocks while capturing the associated carbon. And the combustion, the capture of these combustion products is central to the cycle design when you are developing this technology. And so that's the fundamental thesis of our company, is that by monetizing these carbon credits, we can bring more of that value up the value chain, allowing us to pay more for feedstocks, allowing more land to get treated, and hopefully kicking off a virtuous cycle here. However, all of that is not cheap. Developing new types of turbine cycles, new process technologies is all very capital intensive. And so one of the reasons we were excited about working with CAL FIRE is to essentially get some of the funding that we needed on initial designs to get these plants, the detailed engineering done for these facilities. There are a large amount of challenges to securing financing in this space for any type of project, but especially if it is fixed infrastructure, but even if it's not energy, you're going to be dealing with a very, in our experience, a lot of our investors do not have a lot of appreciation for the challenges of working with biomass, the challenges in getting biomass offtake contracts, in citing these projects in the community engagement that is 100% necessary to get these projects off the ground. So there is kind of a constant tension there. Also, over the past 3 years, obviously, with interest rates doing what they have, it's a very different environment for raising capital for fixed infrastructure as well. And so the funding that CAL FIRE has provided has been incredibly helpful, showing that we have, buy-in from a group that knows the problems that we're dealing with, right? It really helps us convey to our investors of like, look, one of the more preeminent groups, one of the most preeminent groups doing work in this space has said that, yes, this is something that is needed. This is something that is desired, has been incredibly helpful as we go out to seek additional funding. And then in addition, also brings us exposure into groups like this, right? Finding who else is working on these problems, the problems that they're working through. Again, there's a lot of overlap. I think biomass logistics are going to be a pain point for almost everyone in this call because it's not easy to move around. And so extremely excited to get involved here to help, share the learnings that we've encountered, because this is an exciting space and it's a big problem.
Great, thank you for that, Sutton. Does anyone have questions for Sutton?
I'm going to jump in.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sutton. That really, really insightful. One thing that I'm wondering about is, and we're probably going to have a session on this in the future, so hopefully you can join it. But on the finance side, have you found that you've raised the private capital first and then gone for the public funds, or has raising the public funds allowed you to leverage private capital?
It's both. So we raised private capital in so we're currently closing our seed round right now, or not seed round, Series A round. Before we had received the Cal Fire grant, we had raised a seed round, about $12 million of capital from various investors. And of course, that is important to show so that we are a group with serious ideas, right? And of course, CAL FIRE takes that into consideration, but CAL FIRE's support has been also incredibly helpful in securing new capital. Especially, there's a lot of challenges that don't have good quantified solutions. I think biomass sourcing is probably one of the easiest ones that comes to mind. Of when we were going up in front of investors, they'd say, where are your biomass offtake contracts? And it's like, okay, let me tell you a story about the state of the California biomass industry. And that's a really long explanation. It's a confusing explanation. And it's something that they kind of just have to take our word for, right? And of course, as a whole, people like quantified answers to problems. They especially like quantified answers to problems that they don't understand, because they don't know if I'm just a smooth talker or something. And so having CAL FIRE support is saying like, hey, actually, I know I just gave you that long explanation. I know it's probably not as satisfying as you wanted with all the numbers pointing here, there, and the data that you'd like to see from your normal portfolio companies. But here is, CAL FIRE coming in with some support showing that, yes, these are the tools that we need to help unlock these challenges. Another area that has been the case in, especially, and this is a bit more unique to our venture background, and I'd be curious to hear from other venture-backed groups, is that a lot of these venture groups that we're working with do have histories in the technology space, right? It's kind of been the great success story of venture capital for the past 20 years, or longer. In those spaces, you often have to pay people. If you have a problem, you need to either pay someone to solve it or figure out it on your own. Forestry is not the case, right? There's a huge coalition of groups all doing very different things with goals that are often complementary to each other. And so just because there is a potential challenge doesn't mean it's actually something that destroys value when we try to solve it. If anything, other groups are looking for us to provide this tool to help them with their own operations. And telling that story can sometimes be challenging. Again, showing that you have public support and this is something that people need can be helpful to that as well.
Thanks. What just one follow-up with the on the private side, how are you going to folks? Are you going door to door? Are you having like Tupperware parties? Are you?
It's what it feels like sometimes. So there are, we have, as part of our business, we're in a bunch of different spheres. Forestry is, but one of them, we're also in renewable energy and carbon management. So we are kind of embedded in the climate tech carbon management VC world, for lack of a better word. But there are a whole bunch of other sub areas of VC. One that comes to mind is Convective Capital, that I'm sure folks on this call know. They work specifically with fire tech, is kind of the category that they give. And then from, it's really about making that strong connection with one VC, because they're all very well connected. And we frequently lean on our VCs for connections to other VCs and then tertiary connections, and you start building it out there. There is a bit of a challenge in that, of like the further you're reaching, the larger the pool of capital you're talking about, but also the less inherently knowledgeable some of the folks you're working with are. But really, it's been us leveraging existing relationships, but really finding that first fit. And for us, that was with Lower Carbon Capital, who's one of our lead investors. They were very explicit with creating a carbon drawdown fund, and we were actually one of the first to go about that. And then also, I think even internally too, there's been, I think that the financial world is paying a lot more attention to this. And so there are definitely, groups that can help get connected through more conventional financing and also to the venture world. I see Luke from Blue Forest on this call, so shout out to him.
Thanks. Yeah, that's definitely, especially for some of the more rural businesses and organizations, that's definitely one of the biggest challenges. So it's great to have Blue Forest and Luke working on that. And then we might draw on Heartwood Biomass, who's done kind of similar capital rounds and who've offered to kind of share their knowledge in that realm. They're based in Wallowa in southern, kind of southeastern Oregon, but they're also building a mill in Sonora. So that if folks are interested, we might draw on their expertise for that too.
Great. Thank you for that. Great questions. Anyone else have questions for Sutton? Okay. So we'll move to splitting out into breakout groups. And again, the purpose of the breakout groups is to give each of you a chance to connect more specifically on some specific topics, and then see how you might start the conversations of what you're looking for specifically and where other folks might have some information or support they can give. Share contact information. We will be sharing broadly all the contact information for the participants with the survey that we send out after, and ultimately we'll be putting that on a password protected site on the page on the Forest Business Alliance site. So that will be coming, and then you'll have that. But for now, in the immediate too, if there's a specific person you want to connect with, you can do that. And in these groups, and I'll put up a poll here in just a moment, and you can, in fact, why don't I just do that now? This is the poll that you can kind of see. And so what I just invite you to do now is kind of submit the one group that most interests you for today that you would want to be a part of. And the speakers, of course, are invited as well. We hope that you'll stay as well, participate in that. And this will give us a sense both of where the primary interest is, and then also if the groups will be somewhat balanced or out of balance. And what we'd invite you to do here is share some brief introductions for the folks who haven't yet spoken, and then what you're most specifically looking to gain or learn today in this specific group. And then also based on what you're hearing in the group, is there anything that you can offer and share? And so really it's co-creating this conversation already. And we've allotted, and we'd also really like if somebody could just come back at the end, if you can designate one person to share the kind of key highlights or any takeaways that would be useful for the whole group to hear. That way we have that on the recording as well for the folks who had to leave early. And we've allotted about 20 minutes for this. If that feels like not enough time, we are ahead of schedule. So, and I'll put a chat in the message and we can kind of see if more time would be helpful. And alternatively, if you feel like you're done early, then you can come back to the group. We'll do a little wrap up and next steps. And yeah, does anyone have questions before we go? It looks like, great, almost everybody has already participated. So what you'll get in a moment is, and it looks like fairly balanced, so that's great. I'm going to go, okay, everyone's participating. I'm going to end this poll. So this is what will be kind of the groups they'll look like. In just a moment, I'm going to open breakout rooms with these same titles. And then each of you can self-select the group that you're wanting to go into. But before we do that, does anyone have any questions about anything at all so far? Any of the speakers, any of the process, anything? What's next? This is kind of the main chunk of what we wanted to facilitate time, was its actual peer-to-peer learning as well.
Kathleen, maybe just repeat what folks should be talking about when they're in the breakout.
Okay, I will do that. And Tamara, did you have a question?
Sure. I'm interested in manufacturing primary and secondary goods, so I see that as an option, and I don't know if that's available or if people are interested about that.
I think that's kind of in the. I think that'll be included in the marketing group, pretty much. That was one of them, right?
Okay, great. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, good question. Thanks. Anyone else? Okay, so it is just after 1 here on the West Coast time, so we'll plan around 1:20 to come back, unless people say that does that feel like enough time? Let me just check in right now. Because we are a little bit ahead of schedule, quite a bit. So we've allotted up to 2 hours and we want to just honor everybody's time. I got one thumbs up. Thanks, John. Does 20 minutes seem like an okay amount of time? Anyone else? Okay, sounds great. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and do the breakout rooms. And at that time, I'll end them and call back. And so here they are. You can go ahead and self-select. And you just click join next to, oh, and then you're going to do your introductions, what you're liking to gain specifically from today, and what you can share with others based on what you're hearing. And then somebody report back just the highlights.
I'm not seeing options for working for breakout groups.
You're not seeing an option to join?
No.
Me
A
neither.
little pop-up thing didn't come up?
No.
I'm
Okay,
not seeing it either.
I can assign you. So let's just go by one. Chris, where would you like to go?
I'll go to the proposal and fundraising one, or the budget
Okay.
one.
Okay, got it. Jim?
I'd like to go to workforce.
Okay. There you go. Luke?
Proposals and fundraising.
Okay. Jeff?
Proposal fundraising.
Okay.
Same for me, Tom Maseko.
Okay, got it. Proposal budgeting. And then Micah?
Marketing.
Marketing? Okay, great. You got it. Jeff, did you get in? Okay. And we're starting. So with all these report backs, thank you everyone for doing that. Does anyone have questions or comments that have come up from that? And thank you, Drew. And we will send out, I guess I know people are starting to leave. So I did want to mention the next meeting will be the 3rd Thursday of November, and we'll send that in the follow-up as well, same time. But did anyone based on this have any follow-up notes or questions or comments based on anything that's been shared already or the questions that came forth?
I just have one question. Can we get contact information of the people in this group? Emails?
Yes. So we will be sharing that in a spreadsheet as we send the yes, we'll send a survey out for this meeting just to kind of get feedback and see further what folks would like to have included. And in that, we will have the spreadsheet of all the contacts for this meeting. And then in the future, the intent is to put this on the Forest Business Alliance website on a password protected page so that anyone who's in the network can have access to that. So it'll be a fresh live document and we don't have to continuously send out a document, but that'll be what we do to start.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, John.
Excuse me, I have a question. I think maybe was it Carrie talking about that you guys discussed that grants are kind of for different things and hard to piece together. And it made me, and Tamara, this question is going to kind of go to you too. So, we on the grant writing side, we write these guidelines and we say, this is the kind of thing that that projects need to be. Tamara, I think the first application you gave at least one or two unsuccessful before you were successful. And on a brief, I think on one of them, it was like, well, part of your project isn't a great fit with our guidelines. So to what extent have you found like, wow, I had to change my projects as something I didn't want to do just to get a grant? Or was it like, well, that's actually good advice and we can adjust our project for that. And I know everybody that we do, Jeff, we've done debrief with you. There's a lot of folks here. Like, do you feel you need to adjust your project to fit what we're asking for? Which was, we try to write it as open as we can because we want you guys to be creative, but we still have to have guidelines.
Well, we'll see how we did on this last round, John. I'll be waiting for your feedback. But yes, well, the debriefs are very helpful. So that helped us better, scale and structure our proposal. I don't think, well, as a new organization, it's always tricky, right? To actually provide the credentials or the capacity. I think our first report back from you all was that you weren't sure that what we were saying we could do. So that, we just were struggling with the newness of our project and our effort in some ways. And so that's a little tricky for new innovative businesses that are trying to get established, I would say. And then also the scale of what we were working maybe wasn't fitting the CAL FIRE's 1 million acre requirement. And so that was also probably one of our limiting factors, but you did fund us in the second time. So thank you. We're looking forward to our forklift and to move logs around the mill because that's really essential. But I think our scale and our size is kind of working against us a little bit because we are trying to approach it from this community regional scale model.
And I would add to that for everybody that what Tamara was able to show is it's a local solution, but it's replicable and it could be replicated in other local communities. And that caught reviewers' attention and like, okay, so it's not just to address this one forest or one valley in Sonoma County. This could be proven and then replicated. So that became that was well presented and reviewers got that.
That's a key point. John, one of the things too we've been advising folks in the technical assistance is that because there's so much money out there, don't just jump to your solution. Like, create a program that has a theory of change, what your assumptions are that go into how you think you're going to change the system, and develop your solutions from that. And then you can go after the funding based on that kind of portfolio approach of, and so therefore it's not the tail wagging the dog, it's the dog wagging the tail. So that, especially to a couple of the younger organizations that we work with, that I'm not referring to Tamara in this case, but that's been kind of a eye opener for them to take that approach of not just applying to the program of your solution, but taking a couple of steps back and building those building blocks for what you're trying to do.
Great, thank you.
It looks like Roger had a question. Roger,
Yep.
did you try to jump in? Kathleen, if you're
No, that's perfect. That's where we're going. Thank you.
It was more of a comment. Somebody earlier mentioned Cal VTP, and my understanding is that was sort of created in an effort to address the regulatory challenges of getting projects approved. And from what I understand, it's been quite helpful and successful in expediting more landscape scale projects. And as a business alliance or organization, I'm wondering if there might not be similar interest in something around like many of the forestry related projects or end products have something to air quality component to them. So whether it's energy or biochar or something, I think there's a lot of companies that end up with issues of, their local air quality district or EPA, or there's just seems to be a quite a minefield of I don't know, agency approvals to go through to get some of these biomass processing projects approved. So I'm wondering if there's something similar in the concept of the Cal VTP that could help smaller companies try to navigate and simplify the whole bureaucracy of getting some of their biomass projects into operation.
Sorry, that's a great question, Roger, but I don't know if this is answering your question directly, but there's a new protocol that just came out that the spatial informatics group helped develop called the Avoided Wildfire Emissions Protocol. It's through CARB as well. And it actually, they have for any project, and I think this includes infrastructure, but I'm not 100% sure on that. They can calculate the avoided wildfire emissions. It's quantified, and create a marketable or an actual quantified amount that leads to funding for the project. So it's not a ton of funding, but I think it's something that is going to be complementary, especially for thinning prescribed fire projects in the field. But it could also be for sourcing and biomass. Long-term funding contracts for biomass is important in this realm. So that may factor into the permitting and the approvals of those projects. But it was literally just approved in March, April of this year. So it's just getting going, but they've had a lot of people subscribing to it and applying to it.
That sounds like a program that would help with funding, but might not help with a company getting through the regulatory process.
No, you're right. And that's why I kind of qualified those remarks. But yeah, on the regulatory side, it's hard, especially for biomass. But there are a growing number of, I think John can probably speak to this better, but there's a growing number of biomass facilities that are they're being built now. But when I was at National Forest Foundation almost 9 years ago now, we funded a couple of feasibility studies for projects that are just being built now, and that was 9 years ago. So it tells you something about how challenging that the regulatory and other parts of getting those facilities in place.
Yeah, thank you. Good comments. We captured that too. Does anyone else have anything you want to add to the space or ask before we wrap?
Roger, one final thought on that is that we might want to create a subgroup that focuses on that. There's, the Cal VTP is a good example. It's been brought up today. There's the Cutting the Green Tape initiative from CNRA. Those are more, the Cutting the Green Tape is more restoration focused, but maybe there is a solution that addresses some of these issues that's more business focused, but then ties into those. It's still a compliance issue, but maybe it builds on those efforts, and we can create, if there's sufficient interest, a group that focuses on that. There is a task force working group that is working on this, so it might be useful to tie in with them.
That's a good idea. Thanks, Vance. Okay, well, we are at time, and we just want to wrap up and just thank you all for being here. Thank you, John, for your words, and to Tamara, and I think our other presenters had to step off. I'm just looking, but thank you so much for sharing time today. Thank you all for being here. This is only successful when people show up. So thank you for showing up and participating. And the next call, our intention right now is to have these monthly, the third Tuesday of the month from 12 to 2. We'll send that in the follow-up notes as well, along with the contact information. And please do submit any feedback that you have. We'll have just a couple questions that we really do want to hear how this is working for you, what ideas you have, how it could be strengthened, that sort of thing. So we'll keep it short, but it really helps to get your feedback. And thank you for that. And we also have the Peer Learning. Vance, do you want to put the website in the chat? And we'll also include this in the follow-up too. There's a page on the Forest Business Alliance website for the Peer Learning group, and that's where we can start to add more resources and have that grow. And specifically also in the survey, if there's other specific topics that you would like us to prioritize next time, we'll also be looking for that information as well. So be thinking about that you can send us in the survey. Anything else, Vance, that you want to add, or Carrie?
No, thanks everybody for coming today and staying for 2 hours. And we're really looking forward to working with you on developing this network.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.